1. I worked for a Fortune 500 company for almost 20 years. This occurred during a period where I was frontline support, acting as a point of contact for our biggest and most complex client. Since they had every product we offered, I was constantly joining incident bridges. I acted as a go-between for the client and the techs working on the issue. One particular data center stood out in my mind during that time. Their employees would routinely not join bridges. Someone would pass on that the data center had looked at things on their end, determined everything was fine, and so they would not join the bridge. Once I had to host a meeting to discuss the follow-up to a recent incident and invited them, asking them to send a representative. Their participation was crucial, as the issue for once did actually reside in their portion of the environment. However, they refused to join as it occurred during lunch. I replied politely that I had to accommodate availability across multiple time zones and schedules. Could they please make an exception in this instance? So one of their SMEs grudgingly did join. I, along with everyone else in the company, was used to taking meetings during lunch. It was just reality, but not these guys. This entitlement always infuriated everyone else in the organization, and it irked me to no end. But really, there was nothing they could do. The head of the data center was absolutely convinced that his team was acting appropriately and efficiently. Complaints went nowhere, and the organization could not cut the staff in that group. Their portion of the environment, like all portions, was pretty complex, and just about all knowledge about the data center was in the heads of the employees. The business needed their expense to make sure stuff kept working. However, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. The entire environment was gradually migrating and consolidating into a newly constructed new data center. This process took years as section by section was migrated, and the section for the data center was coming up. Once the process was finished, the relevant staff were supposed to be absorbed by speciality into larger teams. Their tribal knowledge would no longer be needed, and their behavior would most likely not be tolerated by their new bosses. Oh. But then the current data center suddenly lost its lease. So rather than the infrastructure being methodically integrated into the new environment, it was simply reproduced as is in a special sectioned-off portion of the building. It became a bolt-on. The staff continued on as before. And when my boss was told this news, he shrugged and went back to work. Life goes on. This was about 5 years ago. I've always been curious as to what happened over time after the move, but I lost touch with the folks involved. Addition. At that time, I had to accommodate people all over the world, mostly in Europe and the USA, with a few here and there in the Caribbean and Australia and New Zealand. It was simply not possible to schedule a meeting that didn't occur during someone's traditional lunchtime. That's reality. Combine that with the fact that typically everyone on these calls, including me, were salaried. No one had to miss lunch. They could have taken a later lunch, or an earlier lunch, or they could have taken it at their desk during the meeting and ran errands or something for an hour. I would do that a lot, where I would eat at my desk and then head to Costco and back. Or they could have left an hour earlier that day, etc., etc. So to refuse to join a meeting during your lunch, that's absurd. That means someone else will always have to join during their lunch. And to refuse to join an incident bridge, this environment, like all other 2 to 3 dozen environments across the company, were intricately linked. I heard a few times that the resulting total network was so complex, it had gone beyond the ability of any humans to understand. So it was policy at my company at that time that everyone who supported the environment would join and help troubleshoot until any issue that required their assistance was ruled out. That exclusion process normally happened very quickly. Sometimes I would join a bridge and be told immediately that my client wasn't affected and I could drop. But not in this environment sometimes. Occasionally troubleshooting was elongated because we needed help from this team. But they would not join the bridge because they had concluded they weren't involved. After-action reviews sometimes went nowhere because this team would also refuse to join the meetings. Finally, I did try to avoid 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern US as that was when the cafeterias were open on the east coast of the US. And at least 80% of the relevant staff for me were based there, and I could typically make it work. Just the very few times I could not, and of those very few times I would sometimes need help from this group. They would almost always complain that the meeting was during lunch. Considering I was on the West Coast and almost always had meetings during 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. my time, those complaints sounded silly, but it all worked out for me. I would eat during the meetings and then run errands later. 2. Cast your minds back to the early 90s. Windows 3.1 had been released. But my employer, the Royal Air Force, was slow on the uptake. Amiga, Mega Drive, and SNES ruled the gaming markets. DOS was the PC weapon of choice. TVs were heavy, and the faults control, tech support section at an RAF air defense site was heavy on people, but light on chairs. The MK-10 radar display, you're seeing the clues to the username, was a heavy, cumbersome CRT thing, but worked with the same principles of a TV. The signals sent to it are beamed onto the screen. This includes the blips you see in movies, as well as the text attached to the blip and the circles telling you how far something is. Those circles are called range rings, and the important fact for later is that the display creates them. Also, radar screens don't go beep at every target. Sick of telling my brother. Now that's flushed out, remember the world of the simple joke? Being sent for tartan paint, glass hammer, a long-stand skyhook's range rings? Our hero of the story, not me this time, told me of the time when a particular airman was new to a particular station in Norfolk. It had been a few years before, back when they had this monstrous radar that shook buildings and made the floor tremble when the head, the spinning bit, was turned on. Said airman had just joined the RAF, done his basic and trade training, and was at real work on his first day. Somehow he hadn't realized that the doors and stairs and multiple turns he'd been shown down meant that he was now in an underground bunker, so when the walls rumbled and the alarm stopped, he asked what that was. "You saw the big radar when you came in, as well as a building directly below it that we're in?" "Yes," he replies meekly. "Well, it's the monthly test of the defenses. It's a bit like Thunderbirds. The sides open up, and we get lowered, so that only the radar head is above ground." "Blimey," thinks our hero, as the other leaves, chuckling to himself. Minutes go by, and then the chief enters, introduces himself to the new bloke, and decides it's time to properly introduce him to work. "See all these displays? They're faulty. Keep giving the wrong distances. I need you to go to stores and get about 5 boxes of range rings," says the chief. Our hero contemplates, and then reality dawns on him. "You won't get me that easily, chief. Stores is on the other side of the camp, and there's no way I can get there when we're at 60 feet underground." News bulletin to any Scopy reading this. You do know that air traffic controllers can do your job. 3. I work for a fairly old company that has been building and configuring servers for customers all over Europe, and even a few across the globe in China and the USA and the likes. One of our products is a standard server chassis with hardware tailored to the customer's needs with motherboard, CPU, and NIC, and any add-on cards the customer needs. This customer bought a fairly standard server with not really any special motherboard or crazy CPU, and just a network card and a storage controller as an add-on card. We shipped it out to the customer about a year or two ago. All working fine with a few SSDs installed in the 12 SSD HDD slots. Operating system already installed. Now, there were still a few empty slots left, so we keep the trays for installing additional 3.5-inch hard drives in the chassis, as per company policy. Now, onto the not-so-experienced customer whom had bought an additional hard drive. Yes, you heard that right. A hard disk drive which, although not much, are still slower than SSDs. Now, as I said before, we installed SSDs. As per the customer's orders, all items are put in an invoice, which is sent to the customer for approval and final go for the order. So the customer knew full well what they were getting. Now, a couple of weeks ago, our support team gets a ticket stating that one of their drives in the server is substantially slower than the others, and they can't work like this and whatnot. So, after about 20 emails back and forth, and the email chain growing and growing with pauses in between because of vacations and sickness on their side, we finally get to the point where my colleague has no more idea and decides, you know what, there's nothing wrong with the server, but the IT guy from their company will not believe or accept that. So we go ahead and build a complete copy of their server. They swap the SSDs and HDD and send us back the faulty server. After some time, the email chain growing to about 70 emails, which is a hassle to read through in order to find out what exactly the problem was in the first place, we get the server. I'm tasked with testing it and basically letting it run under full load and testing several drive slots at the same time to see if anything is broken or has any errors. And by full load, I mean full load. That server was running for several days under 100% CPU, 100% RAM, and maximum performance each disk could achieve. Also no issues, no errors, or any sudden reboots or slower speeds even under, highly unlikely, 100% CPU load. So now we have spent our time and effort fixing a non-existent problem. Afterwards, I then found out through my colleague that the customer installed the hard disk drive and that they had a talk about the slower speeds of the hard disk drive, and that it's likely the problem the IT guy from the other company was reporting. But he was so shy or embarrassed to admit via email or on the phone with my colleague. Needed context for the story. The server we are talking about cost them about 10,000 euros, plus 5,000 euros in service fees for our support and advanced replacement if needed. We, on the other hand, could buy these parts at about 7,500 euros. So we still made money, but it's way less whenever something has to be replaced, because we can't sell these parts as new. We can only keep them in our stock, mark them as service, and send them out once somebody needs a warranty replacement, or an advanced replacement. 4. Back in the 1900s, I worked for tech support for a software company in Northern California. Being on the West Coast, there was always one lucky person who's opened early for the Eastern Seaboard. That would be this monkey. One early Tuesday, I opened the phones, and my first call of the day was in a panic. My software stopped working. As you and I know. Things just didn't stop working. We can figure out how to fix whatever you did, but you have to be honest with me. We started with the basics, kill and restart the license daemon. Okay, the right program is working. Great. Check the other two in your bundle, please.
It's no good. I can't get into the draw operation.
Okay, it could be a corrupt file. Let's recreate your license and I'll email it. Lucky me also got to explain to a systems administrator how to kill a process. I did not ask how long they'd been doing the work. My new friend moved the old license to .old and replaced a new file in its slot. Restart the license daemon and let's try those programs again.
Oh my god, the writing program isn't working.
Okay, I've already asked twice, but I ask again. Have you made any change to the system before this stopped working? I get heaving silence on the other end for a moment. The sysad finally says,
I'm done with you,
and hangs up. Less than 10 minutes later, another tech calls me. My friend escalated her issue to her manager. Okay, I'm a professional, I'll just review the call, just in case, and pick up the tirade from a woman who is pretty angry that I would dare question her people. Yes, ma'am, I am happy to try to resolve this. If you can tell what changes were made to the system, we can...
We haven't made any changes to the system.
Okay, so we try removing and reinstalling.
No, that's not our program. I want someone to fix this now.
So, time to bring in my boss. I have no idea what happened on the call. My boss came a few minutes, 30, later and said, "We're flying head of QA out. I can't find anything wrong from how you've handled it, so we're going in person." Wednesday morning, I open the phones. Less than 40 seconds later, the head of QA is on the line with me. "Did you suggest reinstall?" "Yes, well, I tried to." "Did you ask what they changed?" "Yes, they said nothing changed on the system." I sent her a new license file, restart the LM, and yep, Paint program isn't working this time. QA says, "Let me dig around, I'll call you back." Sometime just before my 10:30 lunch, QA called back. She is obviously trying not to laugh. So I'm reinstalling the entire program. Apparently, Monday night they rebuilt the core and removed a bunch of hardware initialization they weren't using. But they said they hadn't made any changes to the system. Well, obviously the core isn't part of the system. 5. I work for an MSP. We have some customers, including this one, who cannot afford downtime due to the nature of their business. They used to run a self-hosted email server which was dying a slow death. So whenever there was even a slight blip in their emails going down or running slowly, our phones would light up like a Christmas tree. We received several calls one day to say that everybody's emails are running slowly, and they're finding it impossible to work. Every email takes 10+ seconds to open, and it's impeding their workflow. I connect to a machine and test it out for myself, see the exact issue several times over, then notice that the issue doesn't occur on every email, only the ones with their signature in it. I also notice that their email signatures have changed slightly since I last spoke with them. I send a test email to myself for further analysis, at which point I determine that their new email signatures are 12 megabytes in size. Their email signatures are a single image, no text. This has always been the case, but now they had a new design, thanks to a new member of their marketing department, who must surely have some expertise in Photoshop, and should know that making an email signature 9,000 by 14,000 pixels is ridiculous, right? Of course not. So the marketing department create a humongous template, pass it on to the office administrator, who doesn't know any better, then task her with creating 100+ signatures for the entire business, including an instruction sheet on how to change your email signature. Cue every member of the company complaining about Outlook slowing to a crawl. I explain the issue to the office admin who is handing all of these email signatures out, suggest that she speaks with the user in marketing who created the template, then distributes new, smaller email signatures to everybody again. I even offer a few ideas on the most efficient way to go about this, but I never receive a response. I do, however, see users' emails begin to speed up over the course of the next week or so. The strange part is now that every email signature seems to be slightly different resolutions, even some looking somewhat blurry. Eventually, user 1 out in the field calls our office, saying he's having problems attaching his new email signature. I connect, ask him to show me where the file is. He points to a PDF on his desktop, saying that he can't find the option to attach it. I explain that you can't attach a PDF, you need the image file. I suggest you speak with the office administrator and ask her to send you this again in the right format. User 1 says no problem, will do. I disconnect and we end the call. User 1 then emails me and the office administrator requesting the signature in an image format. Office administrator replies, "That's the correct format, just follow the instructions attached." It turns out that their apparent workaround to the 9,000 by 14,000 pixel issue is the following. 1. Recreate the email signature in Photoshop. 2. Not reduce the resolution of the signature at all. 3. Print them as a PDF, still in 9,000 by 14,000. Send the PDF to the relevant user with their signature in it. Advise the user to open the PDF, open snipping tool, and take a screenshot of the signature in the PDF. 6. Save the screenshot. Then use that as your email signature. This explains why the signatures were all different sizes and of different quality. I tried again to advise that this wasn't an efficient way to manage their signatures, but was met with silence in response. Eventually, the users changed their signatures using their internally advised method, leaving them all with mismatched email signatures. At least Outlook was running better again for everybody. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Terrific Tales of Technology, episode 32. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button and share the video with friends and family. If you'd like early access to these videos, you can get that on my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. Support me there for as little as $1 or more a month. You'll also find a link in the description to the Hellfreezer merchandise store on Teespring, as well as a link to the Discord server. And if you really enjoyed today's video, you can leave a tip by clicking on the heart underneath the video. You don't have to do that, although I do appreciate it, and it's very helpful to me. Okay, no other bits and bobs today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, what is the sound that some people enjoy that you find quite irritating? Like, to me, the sound of birds chirping generally means I've been awake too long and I should go to bed. Like, as I record this, the birds have started chirping outside. Why don't you let me know what your answers are in a comment below, if you're comfortable sharing. And before we go, let's have the answer of the day from a previous video. And this was from Terrific Tales of Technology, 31, and was in relation to something you really want, but you're not going to buy it at the moment because you know you just don't need it at the moment. I think mine was an upgrade for my graphics card. I really want like this, the 4090, is that the current one, the really fancy expensive one? But if I had the money to buy that, I'd have so many other things to spend it on. And today's answer comes from Reddit Sloth. You want the same sort of thing I do. Been helping brother get a PC, and looking at parts makes me want an RTX 4080. But I still have 10 payments left on my 3080 Ti I bought last year. Shiny new technology, always making us feel bad by being awesome and shiny. Even though it's probably not too much better. I mean, if your graphics card meets your needs, you know, you may as well stick with the one you've got just now. Thank you very much for your answer, Reddit Sloth. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. I'm going to get to bed because it's late. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.